Hello there, everyone. My name is Jimmy Mack, and welcome back to the 6th Academic Podcast. This is going to be the NS3 textbook, Unit 6, Chapter 20, Cyber Warfare. Now, if you're in Cyber Patriot, pay extra special attention to this one, because this is some stuff you might want to know. Now, cyber warfare is any attempt to penetrate or impair information networks or other computer networks, and if it's done by extremist groups, it's called cyber terrorism. Within the U.S. military, all of the cyberspace operations that are done under the U.S. Cyber Command or U.S. Cybercom, and that's in Fort Meade, Maryland. Now, every service, including the Navy, has a component command within U.S. Cybercom that does its cyber-related activities. It also has, within the Navy component, a whole bunch of ships responsible for it, and the U.S. Cyber Command is responsible for any cryptographic and cryptologic stuff that goes on. So that has to do with code making and code breaking. Now, all cyber operations take place on the cyber battlefield, which is what is generally called cyberspace, which is all computers and all devices and all networks everywhere. And a major component of this cyberspace is the cyber domain, which is all of the users of all of the computers everywhere and how they interact with all of the computers everywhere. Now, users can take on different roles, or personas as they're called, in the cyberspace, and that allows them to interact with it in different ways at different times. Now, there are a couple different parts that you can break the cyber domain down into. You've got interface aspects, which is everything that users use to interact with everything on the cyber domain, be it like hardware or the or like the software that allows things to be displayed. And then you've got logic aspects, which is the information stored within them. And then you've got circuit aspects, which are the paths across which data flows from place to place. And now we get to the core part of what we're trying to do in cyber warfare. We're trying to maintain cybersecurity. But what does cybersecurity really mean? Well, we've got 5 pillars for it. We've got confidentiality, which is keeping information from being shown to people who aren't supposed to have it. We've got integrity, keeping information from being modified or destroyed by people who aren't supposed to have it. We've got availability, which means people who are supposed to have information can get access to it. We've got non-repudiation, which means you can ensure that someone did read information or did make it or did send it if they did, and they can't deny it later. And then you've also got authentication, which means that you can make sure that someone is who they say they are. And those 5 things, confidentiality, integrity, availability, non-repudiation, and authentication, are the 5 pillars of cybersecurity. Now, any attempt to violate cybersecurity is a cyber attack. Just anything that violates one of those 5 pillars. And there are 3 main phases that you've got for it. You've got the reconnaissance, the infiltration and maneuver, and then the exfiltration and maintaining access. So in the reconnaissance, you're just trying to figure out what the weak points of the system are. So you're trying to figure out where the firewall will let you through, what computers or other devices are in the network, and just generally where you can get in. With the infiltration and maneuver, you're actually doing the primary attack. You're trying to gain remote access of a computer usually, and just get control wherever you can. Once you've done that, the exfiltration and maintaining access is you do what you're trying to do, and then you get out. You're trying to leave as little trace as possible, and then you can, if you want, leave a back door or something where you can keep access to that computer while also covering up your tracks as you leave. Now, there are a couple different ways to perform a cyber attack. The simplest way is a semantic attack, where you give a computer incorrect information, and because it doesn't know what the truth is anymore, it takes incorrect actions because of it. Another more advanced method, you can do a syntactic attack, which involves the injection of malicious coding via some form of malware. And now I need to talk about malware, because malware, virus, worm is often used interchangeably, but they're actually very different. Viruses are self-replicating programs, and they usually hide in unlikely areas of memory. Worms self-replicate as well, but they just spread themselves across other places on their own, whereas viruses can't spread without some unintentional assistance. So a virus will spread by being accidentally put onto a USB drive and then moved over to another computer, whereas a worm will actively scan your network and try and clone itself onto another computer over. Another type of malware is called a Trojan horse, and this is a program that looks like something useful. So you see it and you go, "Oh, that's something I want. I want to download this program and run it." And then you do that and it does what you want, but it also has some hidden functionality that you aren't aware of that does bad things on your computer. So once malware is on your computer, there's a lot of stuff that can happen. Your computer can become a zombie, where you think it's under your control, but it's actually under the control of your attacker. And it can be used to send spam or participate in a distributed denial of service attack. And if you have a collection of zombies, they're called botnets. Or they could just delete your files. They could send some of them back to your attacker. They could be spyware, which installs itself and then allows for an attacker to gain information about you that it can either sell or use for identity theft. You can have adware, where it displays ads for you that you don't want. You can have ransomware, where it locks some of your files and demands that you pay someone in order to get it back. This has been especially common with the introduction of cryptocurrency, which is a lot harder to trace. Now, in order to protect a computer or network from cyber attacks, we've got to make it secure. And through that, we've got three principles that you need to keep in mind. The first is least privilege. Any user and program should have all of the permissions it needs to do what it needs to do, and nothing more. Anything you give that you don't need to give is a vector for an attack and nothing else. The next principle that we need to talk about is defense in depth. If you have one firewall and that's the only thing protecting your computer from malicious traffic from the internet, then all you need to do is slip up somewhere on that one firewall and people can get in. But if you have multiple firewalls and malware protection, and you've only got one router out to the internet and that's also got a firewall, then you've got pretty good security. And so what you want to have is multiple lines of defenses, which is why it's called defense in depth. The final principle you need to follow is vigilance, which is just where you constantly need to be paying attention. You need to have administrators, and you always need to be on the lookout for something that could be an attack, so that you don't let it go unnoticed and you can try and do something about it. Now, within the Navy, as well as the military at large, you've got cyber defense that comes in three phases. The first is continuous proactive scanning of the cyberspace by agencies like U.S. Cybercom, the NSA, or National Security Agency, and the DISA, or Defense Information Systems Agency. And then when they detect something, they put out an alert and initiate the second phase, in which teams are dispatched in order to identify exactly what this threat is, how dangerous it is, and how best to combat it. Then the third phase of defense is where they do whatever they can using the information they've gained in order to do damage control, in order to prevent anything, in order to just generally put a stop to whatever that cyber threat can be. But the thing about cyber defense is that any defense that you have is going to be reactive in nature. You can't defend until you've got some threat incoming to defend against. And in the cyberspace, by the time you know about a threat, it is already trying to attack you, and so you have to constantly be on guard, and you're going to be the one reacting. In the future, we might have some rules of engagement where we can detect someone that might be able to attack or be alerted about that, and then launch a proactive cyber attack. But for now, we can only attack other people when they've attacked us by direct authorization of the president, according to just the way the rules work out. So that's where we are in terms of cybersecurity nowadays, just trying to cope with things as they come along. It's still a relatively new field of warfare, but a very important one moving on into the future. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you all tomorrow.